So no matter what natural argument you have to say that the baby's just a clump of cells, well, because science, why is it not just a clump of cells, Nick? Well, because in Luke chapter 1, and this is how we have to be. This is how articulate, how knowledgeable we have to have with God's word. It's not just a clump of cells, because God says she conceived a son. She didn't conceive a clump of cells.
Amen.
She didn't conceive particles. It's not that there's just like a random fertilization event and that she just has a random mass in her stomach. No, it says she conceived a son. There's a baby. There's a human in there. It's alive. If it continues on in verse 39, it says that when Mary goes and ran to the countryside to go meet with her cousin, verse 40, she entered the house of Zechariah and she greeted Elizabeth. And when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, it says that the baby leaped in her womb. The baby. Not the clump of cells. Not just like this mass. The baby. Do we see how it's such a lie that the Bible isn't culturally relevant, that God doesn't have the answers to every one of Earth's problems? The Bible is full of His spiritual wisdom, full of His spiritual instruments, full of His spiritual weapons that could come to combat every principality and every lie, whether it be an abortion, whether it pertains to homosexuality, whether it pertains to world hunger, whether it's to homelessness. The Bible has the answer to every one of the world's problems. The baby, not the clump of cells. It says here in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4, here we see the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah saying, verse 5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." Jeremiah, the person, the prophet, came into existence from the moment that he was planted in the womb. Jeremiah did not become Jeremiah or a person or a human being when he was born. Before he was formed in the womb, God knew him. And in fact, each and every baby that's placed inside the womb, just like everybody here in this room and everybody outside of the womb, has a purpose and plan by God to do amazing things for His honor and for His glory. From the womb! Before they're ever born! Man, that's so special to know that from the very moment that we were conceived, God already had a purpose and plan for your life. Your life mattered from that moment. Because God was going to use you for something big. It wasn't like God was trying to figure out whether you were going to come into existence to then figure out if He's going to give you a purpose and plan. No, it was that your very conception was something that God orchestrated. Talk about having purpose. Talk about having meaning. To know that you were significant from while God was forming you, even in the womb. And all these babies that are being aborted, all these babies that are being killed, are all persons that matter to God, that had a purpose and calling, that had a future, that God was going to use for some purpose and plan. But look how the devil is so manipulating. He's such a liar. He's a murderer from the beginning. And how he goes and he's trying to wipe out all these babies so that there's not one more person that's disposable for God's use. Look at Jeremiah's call. I called you as a prophet. I ordained you as a prophet to the nations while you were still in the womb. Man, if God has a purpose and a plan for somebody inside the womb before they're ever even born, you better make sure it comes to term, that it's born. It says in Isaiah chapter 49 verse 1, "Listen, O coastlands, to me, and take heed, you peoples from afar. The Lord has called me from the womb. From the matrix of my mother, He has made a mention of my name." The prophet Isaiah, God had already ordained him from before he was born. It says here, I was reading an article as I was preparing for tonight's message, and it shared this. It says, in both Isaiah and Jeremiah's life, in their long-lasting personal relationships with God, both of them were convinced that they were appointed to complete kingdom work while they were still in the womb. Both of the prophets write as if from God's perspective, there's no barrier between the prenatal, the preborn, and postborn life. God sees life from the moment of conception. And the biblical idea that God can form a personal relationship with his people in the womb is further evidence that the preborn children possess full personhood. God treats that life so sacred that even when he gave the law to the people of Israel, it says in Exodus chapter 21, verse 22, it said that if he were to hit a woman and she gave birth to a dead child, then he would be killed as consequence for the decision that he made to hit her. Already God equating life for life, the preborn with the postborn.